So Alan Jackson has stepped down from the case, stepped aside, and I'm telling you, the media world is going absolutely nutso. TMZ is running with their narrative full on that this is because Nick Reiner is schizophrenic, that he has mental issues, all kinds of stuff. And they're running. They even have a documentary that's coming out on Friday night. I believe it's on Fox. And then what's the other channel? It's going to be available, I think, on Hulu later. That's coming out on Friday. But it's weird that TMZ has been preparing this documentary since really December 14th. That to me is a little bit bizarre. They're not even waiting for the trial or anything. They're just full on. Here it is. Here's why Nick Reiner is guilty. And we have all the evidence that you ever need. And they're putting it in the form of a documentary again, which is going to be airing this Friday night. So I'm probably going to watch it as well. And then I'll share my thoughts maybe over the weekend or whatever. But I think in some ways this could be quite damaging perhaps for Nick's defense. I think they will have this is going to be a tough battle for them. And it could be difficult for the prosecution as well, because if we're talking about not tampering or not tainting the jury, this documentary has the chance to really taint a lot of people, as in move them in the direction that Nick is crazy, and the defense will have no choice but to say that Nick Reiner is not guilty by reason of insanity. And they're pushing for this narrative so strong, and it's running wild. It's like a wildfire that can't be extinguished. So I thought perhaps I would just run through some scenarios as to why perhaps I think the real reason why Alan Jackson stepped aside, and I think this actually might help the defense. I know that's going to sound bizarre right out of the gate, but bear with me. I think there's a reason. I think this is actually strategic in some ways as to what Alan Jackson did. And I'm going to share some of my thoughts, some of my insights, because perhaps you didn't think of this. Again, the media is just running nutso on the idea that Nick is crazy. And again, with this documentary coming out. So, of course, I, as a Black Swan, have to present some other thoughts, some other ideas. So we're going to put ChatGPT to use as to some of the reasons perhaps that this happened. So stay tuned. And I think you'll get a perspective that perhaps you never saw before. So let's just go right into this. Let's go right into ChatGPT. All right, here are some credible, non-sensational reasons you can confidently lay out under the title, Alan Jackson Stepped Down. Here's the real reason without accusing anyone or overreaching. The real plausible reasons explained simply. This is a conflict, not a scandal. High-profile attorneys sometimes step aside before a conflict becomes a problem. Even indirect connections, past cases. Don't forget, he was actually a lawyer for Kevin Spacey. Overlapping circles can trigger this. And this is the problem with trying cases for Hollywood, is the circles overlap each other. Kevin Spacey knows Conan O'Brien. Conan O'Brien knows Rob Reiner. Nick Reiner obviously is in that circle. He's in the family. So he's going to know all of these people. And there's a chance that somewhere down the road, someone may have said something to Alan Jackson. Maybe it's an actor, maybe it's somebody that he's previously worked on a case for, don't know. But if somebody says, Nick is innocent, or Nick is guilty, here's why, that could come up for the prosecution later, as in you were talking to some of the celebrities, or for whatever reason. This could affect Alan Jackson. Just a simple conversation by saying, "Hey, I heard you're talking about this case," or whatever. And obviously people talk, but if it's an actor that was at the Christmas party and they say something to Alan Jackson, he might have to step down because of that reason alone. Because again, you don't want anything that the prosecution could use against Alan Jackson. So let's continue here. This is a strategy, not a retreat. This can actually strengthen the defense. A lower profile attorney avoids distractions. So this is a public defender, someone that nobody knows. So you can't say that Alec Jackson is doing it for money, no money, whatever it is. You can't use that on him because he's no longer the lawyer for Nick. So again, this is a strategy, not a retreat. This can actually strengthen the defense. A lower profile attorney avoids distractions, media narratives, and side issues that can hurt the jury pool. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say Alan Jackson is doing this as a favor. He's doing it because of the money. He wants more money, whatever. Or he's not getting enough. He left because he's not getting enough money. Like everything went on to Alan. Like it's almost like the idea, because he alone has star power, in some ways is almost contaminating the jury, the investigative process, because everybody's talking about Alan Jackson and his star power, that this is who hired him, how much did it cost, all this kind of stuff. This could actually be a distraction. So him stepping down could actually help the defense, because now they won't get distracted because nobody knows who this lady is. I think her name was Emily Green or something. We'll come back to her. But I think this is something that is interesting that I didn't see before. Was this could be a strategy? Whether or not it happened on purpose, that's another question. That's a sidebar issue. But maybe this is actually something that can actually help strengthen the defense. And I'll explain why in a little bit. The star power became a liability. So when the lawyer becomes part of the story, it's a problem. Courts don't like trials turning into media events. Removing a famous name can calm things down, and I think this is exactly what it's going to do. It'll allow the defense to do their job. Preserving attorney-client privilege. If outside conversations, calls are helpful, opinions start floating around, stepping aside prevents any argument that privilege was compromised. Preventing subpoena chaos. A well-known lawyer can attract unwanted attention, witness, third parties, even unrelated figures. A quieter legal team keeps the focus tight. Meaning, if you have a a lawyer, a highly sought out lawyer like Alan Jackson, this could bring in more people to be subpoenaed than is actually necessary. This could produce more chaos. People are coming out of the woodworks that have nothing to do with the story. Because you saw earlier in this morning's video or yesterday morning's video, depending whenever I decide to show this video, we saw that Alan Jackson was going to make a segue, as in he's stepping down, stepping aside to in regards to something that was beyond Nick's control. It had nothing to do with Nick. And I think it's because a little bit of the star power that Alan Jackson brought to the table. And if you get all these people coming out of the woodworks to say, I want to share my story, that can actually taint things. So now you have someone that is the defense attorney, a public defender, that could actually take over the case. And Alan can actually groom her and say, look, you got to watch out for this or watch out for that or whatever it is. And she can actually build a stronger case. And I have a funny suspicion that they're going to get someone even more specialized in this case without pushing the arraignment further past February 23rd. But this will give enough time for a new lawyer to step in, whether it's the current lawyer or if it's maybe a new lawyer. But that doesn't mean that that it's going to get pushed any further, because I think eventually the judge will say, you got what you got. Let's just move forward with the trial. So I think the subpoena chaos, which is what it appears, was Alan Jackson was saying, look, we have 10 people. I want to lock those 10 people in. I want to tag those 10 people. I don't want it to get lost because I'm now transitioning. I'm actually transferring all the files over to the defense that's now taking over. I need those before the court to be locked in. Yes. And they said, yes, we don't see any problem with that. So now those 10 are going to be the 10 that the defense is going to be going after during this trial. What else do we have? So quieter legal team keeps the focus tight. Timing matters. Doing this before a plea is entered is key. It avoids appeals later that argue ineffective counsel's bias, procedure unfairness. You don't want any of that stuff to mess this up. Still supporting from background, stepping down doesn't mean abandoning the client. Senior attorneys often remain advisors, helping strategy without being the public face. So in some ways, I think Alan can actually help this case still, because we don't have a transitional time frame, as in, Alan, you need to have all the files, everything that you have on this case transferred over into their hands by tomorrow. It might take 30 days to explain every single file that they have to the new lawyer and the new defense team, and maybe share with them some things that they missed or some things that they were looking into before they had to step aside. Could be possible. And you're not going to get the public distraction of when is Alan going to speak next. So the big takeaway, let's see, it's not about guilt, it's about protecting the case. All right, so let's say, what are some more reasons a person like Alan would step down? Let's just look at all the angles. So here are some very real reasons someone at Alan Jackson's level would step down. And again, this doesn't mean scandal, guilt, or panic, but professional risk management. More legitimate reasons. A top-tier lawyer steps down. Protecting the appeal record. Elite defense lawyers think 2 steps ahead. If there's any chance that a conviction could be later challenged due to bias, notoriety, conflicts, media influence, they remove themselves early so the record stays clean. Appeals courts love clean records. This is preemptive lawyering. Media narrative was becoming dangerous. When headlines shift from the case to the lawyer, that's bad. Jurors see headlines, judges see headlines, prosecutors use headlines. Stepping down can actually reset the narrative. The judge signaled concern off the record or subtle. Judges rarely say things bluntly. Sometimes it's a look, a comment, a scheduling move, a tone change. Veteran attorneys can read the room and decide this judge doesn't like this setup. Prosecutorial pressure behind the scenes, not improper, but strategic. Motions, hints of conflict, challenges, threats of delay, or objections. Stepping down avoids months of procedure warfare. Insurance, firm liability concerns. Big name attorneys carry malpractice insurance, firm risk exposure, reputational safeguards. If insurers or partners say this creates exposure, this matters. Discovery volume becomes massive. Some cases explode in scope. Phones, digital forensics, third party data, surveillance. A lawyer may realize this needs a different team structure. Client protection from guilt by association. Even if the lawyer did nothing wrong, others might dislike him or distrust him because of his prior cases. Think Kevin Spacey, Karen Reed, and others. Public opinions, reputation. I've heard this. I've heard people say this. He's doing it for the money, all this kind of stuff. Now that's eliminated. It's virtually eliminated. Instead, what people say, this lawyer doesn't have enough experience. So a client should never pay that price. Jurisdictional or venue sensitivity. Local courts sometimes react poorly to outsiders, celebrity lawyers, big city defense teams. Legal counsel can have an edge. Avoiding being called as a witness. If a lawyer has conversations, background knowledge, early involvement, they could become a witness, which disqualifies them anyway. Stepping down early avoids that mess. Client's long-term interest over ego. The hardest reason, but the most honorable. I care more about winning than being seen. Top lawyers know when they are no longer the best chess piece. Security and family concerns. High-profile cases bring threats, stalking, doxing. Sometimes the cost becomes too high personally. Preserving other active cases. A lawyer with multiple clients may step down to avoid scheduling conflicts, divided attention, weakened performance elsewhere. And this is what I'm thinking. Like, don't forget that Alan Jackson also had other cases pending. And he said, on record, he said, when I got the phone call, I dropped everything, meaning he had other stuff going on. This could be one of the reasons why Alan just needed time for the family to find enough evidence or a lawyer or whatever it is. They still could be looking at a new lawyer that is going to be deadly when it comes to presenting Nick as not guilty. Because again, in the last video, I said what I am expecting Alan Jackson to say is, my client is not guilty. And that's what he said. So I haven't been wrong so far. I haven't been wrong. I know TMZ is running wild right now. They're getting all crazy with all their stuff. But I would have been more surprised if Alan Jackson had said not guilty by reason of insanity. I don't think they're going that way. I really don't. I think that's media hype to try and get you to think that this person is crazy. And again, you have to prove it without a reasonable doubt. And it's weird that TMZ is working overtime to produce a documentary that's going to be airing in a couple of days. What happens if the trial had already been set? Like, it just, I don't know. It's kind of bizarre. was wondering what this was. Squirrel. I was wondering what this was. Standing here in front of the camera. It's weird that TMZ is running full on with this documentary. It's like they finished it before, and I don't know where to put this thing. It's in my way. Excuse me. It's weird to put that out so fast. Like they were blazingly fast in finishing up this documentary to prove their point that Nick is insane. That's the whole reason for this documentary. They're not even waiting for the trial, folks. Nothing. And that's weird in America that they could have this out there already. So it's going to be a lot of, I think, sources say, and maybe in some ways, there, perfect. Maybe in some ways, this will also actually help out the defense. Because you better believe if you are interviewing people at Conan O'Brien's party and let's just say you have Bill Hader and he says, yeah, the guy's crazy or whatever. Bill's first on the list to be subpoenaed, guaranteed, next to Conan. If this documentary, and I have a sneaking suspicion that this is going to be a lot of he said, she said, and it might even be people that are having their voices changed, their names to protect them, like names changed, all this stuff. It could be John Doe, and then the voices are manipulated. That's what I'm kind of leaning. That's what I'm expecting to see with this documentary. I don't expect to see Ron Howard, Jane Fonda, Billy Crystal, Conan O'Brien, Bill Hader. I don't expect them to go, Nick did it. Nick is a criminal. He should have been locked up years ago. I don't think they'll say that. I think what instead what we'll get is more of the same of, here's a piece of footage that Nick Reiner said on a podcast or while he was making a mockumentary. Cut. Let's insert a subject with someone that is blacked out so that you don't know who they are and you don't know their voice. And then they'll start saying, Nick was uncontrollable. He couldn't be controlled. Anytime we had a meeting, he would interrupt us for like 20 minutes straight. And it was so weird. He can't be controlled. And then you realize that they're talking about the yoga instructor who was a yoga instructor for the Reiner family when Nick was 7 years old, and he'd come into the room and interrupt the yoga session. And people are like so mad, like today, going, how could Nick not stand still as an adult? That's so weird. It's like, well, the yoga instructor was talking about when he was 7. And I think they're going to focus on Nick being in rehab 18 times, because that shocks people. They're going to be like, what? You mean from when he was 14 to he was 32, 18 times? Actually, no. It's more like 18 times by the time he was 16. 17, 18 times by the time he was 16. Which means if that's the only number that they keep coming up with, 17 or 18, since he was 16 years old, why not 20? Why not 30 times? Why do they always say 17 or 18 before he was 18 years old? Why is that the case? Doesn't that make it a little bit more suspicious that they're going to be using a documentary going back in time to before he was 18? And then I think they're going to use more clips of the Leaving Charlie video, the movie that Nick Reiner co-wrote with his friend Matt, and Rob helped polish, because when they brought it to Rob, when they brought the script to Rob, it was 4 years in the making, which means Nick was working on a script from 18 years old to 22 years old. And then he presented it to Rob, and Rob said, "This is garbage. There's no emotion in here. All you got is one-liners." Because it was supposed to be a comedy, a dark comedy. And Rob said, "What if, Nick, what if you use some of the stories that you gleaned from being in and out of rehab? Why don't you use some of the stories?" And Nick's like, "Well, there are actually some stories that didn't happen to me, but I witnessed at the rehab, and I think I can inject that into the movie." And like, great. And we need some kind of conflict between the father and the dad, or the father and the son. And they put that in there. They put the tension because Rob knows how to make a movie, knows how to build that tension. And they have been on record saying, that's not us. That's not how we treat each other. That's not how we speak to each other. That's fiction. The movie is fiction. It's got different names. It's got a different family dynamic. The only thing that's similar is there's a father, there's a son, and there is rehab and the drug abuse and all that kind of stuff. But that's not Nick's life. It's not a documentary on his life. TMZ is going to do a documentary, a so-called documentary on Nick's life. And I think they're going to try again and assassinate his character, his name, by going back in time to before he was 22 years old. I think they're going to start with him being 7 and being uncontrollable. And then they're going to interview the yoga instructor and say, "Yeah, man, like this person was 7 years old and they're crazy." They might not even mention the name, the age. They'll just say something like, "Nick was young and he's crazy. This is why he killed the parents." Like, they're just going to leap over that. And I think this is going against mental illness in America, where this is basically they're targeting people that are mentally ill, saying, if you have a mental illness, this disease can turn violent. That's what they're pushing here. That if you have an addiction to alcohol, to meth, to weed, whatever it is, you're going to be violent enough to kill your parents. And I don't know how else to look at it, but that seems to be what they're pushing. When you look at it, smoking weed doesn't make you violent. Just doing that alone. In fact, it makes you more relaxed. I don't know. I haven't smoked weed in like 40 years, 45 years. And even then, it was just an inhale. And I'm like, yeah, I don't need that. The point is, you could say that's a stigma. That's not fair, Shane. Weed doesn't make you relax. It actually makes you kill your parents, unlike your parents. That's what it does. It's like, well, show me the data behind that, because I don't believe you. I don't believe you that every single person that smokes weed is going to go out and commit a crime. I don't believe that. And in LA, smoking weed is not illegal. There are some things that you could take in LA that you can't take anywhere else. So that doesn't mean you're a criminal because you smoke weed in LA. That's something to think about as well. They look at things a little bit different there. So, to summarize this, I think there are more reasons that meets the eye as to why Alan Jackson stepped down. And it may not be the reasons that TMZ is saying, that, oh, Alan saw something that he couldn't handle. That's why he did it. That's why he stepped aside. I don't think that's the case at all. Anyways, thank you for watching my basically my analysis after Alan Jackson stepped down, because it was a shocker to me. I didn't expect that move at all. And if I were to guess, I would almost say that there is a chance there could be another lawyer, another public attorney that is actually as qualified or maybe more specialized coming down the road. So we'll pay attention to that when it shows up. But thank you for watching. Appreciate you guys. Make sure and subscribe to this channel. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.